Welcome to our introductory course on Eternalism, the divine philosophy of the eternal worlds. Unit 32, Emergency Podcast for Parents of Latter-day Saint Youth, Part 7. In Unit 32, we continue this emergency podcast series for parents of Latter-day Saint Youth, diving deeper into the rising storm of artificial superintelligence, social media influencers, and unvetted spiritual impressions, forces capable of overwhelming today's youth. This rising storm underscores President Russell M. Nelson's warning that we will not survive spiritually in the coming days without the constant influence of the Holy Ghost. I want to open this emergency podcast under the heading Situational Awareness with this clarifying message. Navigating the spiritual realm amid today's rising storm begins with situational awareness. Situational awareness during a natural disaster means understanding what's really happening and acting quickly when every second counts. Most people stay confused or in denial, putting themselves at greater risk. Only a small minority, about 5 to 10%, grasp the danger and respond decisively. Likewise, situational awareness amid cultural upheaval means seeing deeper realities and responding with moral clarity and principles rooted in truth, not just feelings-based reactions. In these moments, preserving truth and moral clarity is vital to navigate cultural chaos and protect the standards and stability our communities need. Navigating the spiritual realm amid today's rising storm begins with situational awareness as well, but of a different kind. It's the kind of spiritual awareness we need most now. Not outward, but inward. It's not just my problem, it's our problem. It's a spiritual and collective self-reckoning that asks where we really stand before God, both individually and together. This kind of situational awareness and self-reckoning starts with courageously facing up to three things. 1. Our LDS All Is Well in Zion echo chamber. 2. Our feelings-based spiritual feedback loop. And 3. The paradox of discerning discernment. Let's look at each one. Navigating the spiritual realm amid today's rising storm begins with situational awareness. And right now, that means an honest LDS self-reckoning. This checklist has 3 seldom examined areas that have long lingered in the background, but rarely get named and faced head-on. First is our LDS All Is Well in Zion echo chamber. Our belief-preserving mechanism, a comfortable religious safe zone that reassures us we're spiritually fine, both individually and collectively, without ever pausing to ask if we really are. This echo chamber silences dissent in favor of conformity, uniformity, and unanimity. Once we see this for what it is, we move to the second checkpoint, our feelings-based spiritual feedback loop. This is our tendency to trust strong, heartfelt impressions or emotions as automatically divine without seeking any outside confirmation, creating a closed loop that often mistakes our own feelings for God's voice. With this second box checked, we turn our situational awareness to a third concern, the LDS paradox of discerning discernment, the idea that you need the Spirit to discern the Spirit. This can create a kind of circular reasoning that clarifies little and complicates much, because it often assumes we already possess the gift of discernment by default. To move past this, we need a model of spiritual scrutiny that honors the gift of discernment, but doesn't rely solely on an internal claim or external authority. Instead, it balances an inner witness, external authority, and honest external testing. All 3 are vital. In the end, this self-reckoning checklist exposes blind spots that keep us spiritually complacent and vulnerable. Facing these honestly is the first step toward true spiritual scrutiny. If we're serious about navigating the spiritual realm amid the rising storm, we can't hide in comfortable echo chambers, lean on untested feelings, or settle for circular claims of discernment or appeals to authority. We need a model that tests and balances this inner witness with external reality, turning the gift of discernment into a safeguard, not just a slogan. Having completed our situational awareness And having grounded ourselves in the gospel truth that we are rational, volitional, and fallible moral agents, endowed with the light of Christ, we're now ready to step fully into the paradigm shift discussed in earlier episodes. This new shift begins with recognizing two opposing plans, one that insources light and truth, and one that outsources it. From there, we'll explore two insourcing models, divine guidance as a transitional model, and divine becoming as a transformative one. This distinction leads us to the two moral outcomes. We either become less free and Christ-like by dimming the light within, or we become more free and Christ-like as we brighten the light within and as we actively grow into our divine potential. So the path ahead is clear. We choose to insource light and truth, embrace divine becoming as our transformative model, and commit to becoming more as we grow in light and truth and shine brighter and brighter until the perfect day. Let's begin by exploring these two opposing plans, insourcing or outsourcing light and truth. Our first step is to explore these two opposing plans, insourcing or outsourcing light and truth. As we do, keep in mind the larger goal, navigating the spiritual realm in the rising storm of the latter days. This new paradigm makes that navigation clearer and more relatable, but it starts with understanding the two plans, insource light and truth, or outsource and lose them. That's where we begin. If I could make an even bigger deal about these two words, insourcing and outsourcing, I would. Calling them two gospel megawords barely does justice to how vital they are for understanding how we navigate the spiritual realm today. Their importance can't be overstated. But first, we need to go over three critical points and end with one key takeaway. Key point 1, not all insourcing and outsourcing are created equal. Let's unpack that. First, a table overview. This table shows the 4 ways we can handle insourcing and outsourcing, revealing how each can be life-enhancing or life-diminishing, depending on what we choose to take in or send out. On the top row, we list the 2 big actions, insourcing, bringing something into yourself, and outsourcing, sending something outward or giving it away. In the left column, we list the moral impact, good, life-enhancing, or bad, life-diminishing. Now let's break down each cell. Cell 1, insourcing aligned with good, receiving light and truth within oneself, choosing to internalize God's Spirit, and committing to personal discipleship. This transforms you from the inside out. Cell 2, insourcing aligned with bad, internalizing darkness, embracing falsehoods, pride, selfishness. This corrupts your soul from within. Cell 3, outsourcing aligned with good, God radiating light and truth outward, increasing His glory by lifting others, sharing truth to uplift others. We do the same by sharing truth, serving and teaching. This spreads light and multiplies goodness. Cell 4, outsourcing aligned with bad, handing away your agency, surrendering your light and truth, letting others think for you, drifting into spiritual apathy. This drains your light and leaves you spiritually, morally, and even physically weaker. The key takeaway, insourcing and outsourcing aren't automatically good or bad. It all depends on what you're insourcing or outsourcing. What you choose will either increase your light and truth or drive it away. Now that we've seen all 4 cells, we're going to narrow our focus to just 2, your good insourcing, cell 1, and bad outsourcing, cell 4. Why? Because these 2 show the sharpest contrast, the uphill effort of insourcing light and truth versus the downhill slide of outsourcing it or abandoning it altogether. And that brings us straight to our second point. Insourcing light and truth is hard. Outsourcing or forsaking it is easy. Let's begin our inquiry into this second point with a series of questions and answers that have deep implications for navigating the spiritual realm in these latter days. Consider this heartfelt question many of us have pondered. Why does heaven feel so hard to reach while hell seems to come looking for us? The answer is simple and direct. Heaven must be sought, hell comes uninvited. This sense of struggle and ease isn't a coincidence. It reveals a deeper spiritual reality and leads us to a second question. Why is insourcing light and truth so hard, while outsourcing it is so easy? Again, the answer is simple and direct. Because insourcing demands much, outsourcing requires little. The sharp contrast between the hard work of insourcing light and truth and the ease of outsourcing or forsaking it shapes much of our spiritual journey. To put it in relatable terms, imagine life's spiritual journey as being a lot like chutes and ladders. The ladders are the hard, upward paths. Each rung adds more light, truth, and spiritual strength, drawing us closer to the perfect day when we're fully in tune with the light of Christ. Every step up demands effort, discipline, and righteous choices. The chutes, by contrast, are easy, enticing, and slippery. One careless slip, drift, or poor choice sends us sliding backward, often erasing progress and leaving us feeling like we're back at square one. Climbing upward is hard, sliding downward is easy. This isn't just about difficulty, it reveals a deeper truth. Insourcing light and truth demands real effort from both God and us. He offers more light and guidance, but we must choose, act, and internalize it. Forsaking or outsourcing that light, however, is effortless. It's the easy path of drifting, surrendering, and giving away our agency. This same principle plays out in our spiritual and temporal worlds as well. Consider the ancient Liahona, which required faith, diligence, and worthiness to guide Lehi's family, compared to our modern GPS, which asks nothing of our character to work. One path demands much, the other very little. For instance, the Liahona worked only when Lehi and his family were faithful and obedient. It demanded personal righteousness, spiritual preparation, and sincere seeking. While the modern GPS devices function regardless of who is using them, no character, worthiness, or moral effort is needed to receive directions. The Liahona was a spiritual compass that not only gave direction, but also represented the increasing light and truth granted to those who ensource God's Spirit. While the GPS gives practical directions to any user, but does not challenge, change, or spiritually uplift the person following it. Using the Liahona required effort, choosing to follow its counsel, internalizing its light, and making righteous decisions was essential for it to work. While the GPS requires almost no effort beyond following its prompts, it does not demand character growth or spiritual striving. The point is this: insourcing divine light and truth through instruments like the Liahona is hard because it demands much from both God and us: effort, righteousness, and transformation. While outsourcing guidance through external tools, like a GPS, is easy because it requires little to no effort or moral qualification. To truly appreciate the significance of these distinctions, ask yourself how many people's GPS systems would be working today. Were these GPS systems dependent on a character or worthiness qualification to operate properly? One can imagine that such a qualification would put an immediate end to the popularity, use, and convenience of such a navigating tool in our day. While the Liahona is before us, I can't help but pause to draw out its remarkable uniqueness. Let's take a brief sidetrack to explore this curious object and its two unique layers. First, its evidence of authenticity, where truth is stranger than fiction, a quiet, subtle twist no fictional storyteller would invent. Second, its internal-external witness, showing a clear example of how inward impressions and outward witnesses work together to confirm truth. Let's look at the first layer. If the Book of Mormon were mere fiction, its mysterious ball of curious workmanship, the Liahona, would be just another fictional, magical, and fanciful relic. A powerful object that works for anyone, grants worldly power, and fuels dramatic conflict. Instead, what we find is something no typical storyteller would invent: a sacred tool whose power depends entirely on the righteousness of its users. Here are a few comparisons. First, the Liahona works only through faith and worthiness. Its guidance stops when the people rebel. No unrighteous holder can force it to work. Secondly, it gives direction, not dominance. It offers no power over others, only quiet spiritual guidance for those who seek it. Third, it cannot be exploited or abused. If someone tries to misuse it, its power simply disappears, rendering it useless as a tool for control or greed. In contrast, a typical magic ball works for anyone who holds it. In fiction, the power comes simply from having it. Purity or character doesn't matter at all. Second, it grants power and dominance, or secrets, that can be used for control. It drives the story forward with mystery, conflict, and dramatic struggles for ownership. Third, its magic rewards ambition and cunning, not righteousness, and can easily be exploited and abused. Whoever wants it badly enough can take it and use it for their own gain. The Liahona's conditional and spiritual nature, working only through faith and stopping when hearts rebel, is nothing like a fictional, magical, and fanciful relic. No ordinary storyteller would invent a magic ball that refuses to work for the unrighteous. This stranger-than-fiction detail challenges claims that the Book of Mormon is mere fiction and stands as quiet proof of its authenticity, showing it as far stranger and truer than any invented tale. So no, the Book of Mormon isn't fiction at all. It's stranger than fiction, and that very oddity is evidence of its authenticity. The Liahona flips the usual claim of a fictional script on its head, showing that here truth really is stranger than fiction. And when we see unique details and unexpected twists like this woven into its pages, it changes how we read the whole record, not as a clever invention, but as an authentic history full of surprising sacred moments that no storyteller or fiction writer would invent, yet real people lived and recorded them, not to entertain, but to instruct. The next layer of the Liahona's uniqueness connects directly to spiritual discernment, the principle that true spiritual confirmation relies on both an internal and an external witness, working together to test and prove what's real. The Liahona is a clear example of how inward impressions and outward witnesses work together to confirm truth, with both witnesses reinforcing each other. First, there's the internal witness. Righteousness brings inner light, a burning clarity, a lift of mind and spirit, a growing Christ-like freedom that glows brighter and brighter until the perfect day. Second, there's the external witness, the Liahona itself, a real, tangible object held in the hand, existing outside oneself that physically responds to that inner righteousness. Its working or not working is objective evidence that confirms both the inner prompting and the divine origin of the device itself. God gave Lehi's family this dual witness on purpose. The Liahona made sure their spiritual impressions didn't get trapped in a feelings-based spiritual feedback loop, but were matched by an outward sign they could all see, hold, and validate. It's not all inward or all outward. It's both together. And that is how true spiritual discernment works. Internal impressions validated by external evidence, proving the experience is from God, not just imagination or emotion. Notice how these two witnesses are inseparably connected. The outward sign doesn't work as intended without the inner witness behind it, and vice versa. This invites us to consider whether the Book of Mormon itself is designed the same way, combining an inward spiritual witness with an outward, tangible reality. Let's explore that idea further. The Book of Mormon, like the Liahona, isn't a passive relic. It's a living witness. Its pages exist as tangible, objective evidence you can hold in your hand, but they only work as intended when combined with the inward witness of the Spirit. Without that spiritual harmony, it may appear to some as just another book, or even pure fiction. But when the reader brings faith, humility, and a sincere heart, the physical book becomes a powerful outward testament that matches and confirms the inward impression. This explains why the same Book of Mormon inspires deep conviction in some, while seeming meaningless to others. The two witnesses, inward and outward, must work together. Without spiritual alignment, the outward sign is just paper and ink. With it, the book stands as objective evidence that the inward witness is real, and the inward witness confirms the book's divine origin. Which leads us to ask, why are there no gold plates on display? Wouldn't that be the greatest proof of authenticity? The answer might surprise you. The gold plates would have robbed us of agency, faith, and the need for an internal witness. Like Elijah's fire called down from heaven, in a spiritual showdown with the prophets of Baal, a sign alone removes doubt and debate, but demands no faith and leaves no room for agency. The gold plates would have compelled belief without an inward witness. Instead, God chose the better way. Outward evidence and inward witness, working together to preserve both genuine faith and personal agency. After that brief detour into the Liahona's uniqueness as an artifact, let's return to our main theme and wrap up this first section with our final point. Two opposing plans, insourcing versus outsourcing, led to war in heaven. Let's turn to that now. To understand the war in heaven, we need to look at two opposing plans: God's plan of insourcing light and truth, and Lucifer's plan of outsourcing it, mostly to himself. Remember Lucifer's words in the book of Moses, where he boldly claims, "I will redeem all mankind, that one soul shall not be lost, and surely I will do it, wherefore give me thine honor." Now here's what God's plan looks like. First, it internalizes light and truth, meaning we each take responsibility to seek and live by truth. It preserves agency, allowing us to choose for ourselves. It calls for merit-based rewards, so progress depends on effort and growth. And it's difficult and risky, requiring Jesus Christ's atoning sacrifice to make it possible. On the other hand, Lucifer's plan externalizes light and truth, primarily to himself and others like him. It abrogates agency, taking away our freedom to choose. It demands equality of outcomes, regardless of effort or merit, and it's easy and risk-free, needing no sacrifice to implement. With these contrasts clear, let's now turn to the theocratic nature of the vote in heaven. The three key points under the heading, the theocratic nature of the vote in heaven, are: first, heaven is a theocracy, not a democracy. Decisions are made by divine authority, not by popular vote or majority rule. Second, the vote was a sustaining vote, not an electoral contest or referendum between two opposing plans. The vote was simply to sustain God's eternal plan, not a ballot to pick one plan or party over another. And lastly, 1/3 refused to sustain God's insourcing, merit-based plan due to its unequal outcomes and perceived risks. They rejected God's plan because it offered no guarantees and demanded personal accountability they weren't prepared to accept. With that said, we are now prepared to identify the twofold cause of the war in heaven: refusal and rebellion. First, remember, the conflict was between preserving agency through insourcing light and truth and losing it through outsourcing. This conflict produced two outcomes: this refusal to sustain God's plan, which challenged the divine order, and the open rebellion that followed the failed attempts to override God's will. In the end, this reminds us that the war in heaven was not just about refusing to sustain God's eternal plan, but about rebelling against it, after 2/3 chose to embrace it and move forward in faith. In short, refusal alone does not equal open rebellion. But when refusal turns to rebellion against God, it becomes much more than mere disagreement. It is treasonous and wicked. With that said, we're now ready to reveal our key takeaway. Navigating the spiritual realm is all about insourcing versus outsourcing light and truth, and the gift and responsibility of agency. This key takeaway leads us to a crucial set of questions. Why was agency central to the conflict, and why were 1/3 willing to surrender it? Let's explore these crucial questions through the lens of three provocative philosophers who wrestled with the burdens and blessings of freedom, responsibility, and collective duty. While their conclusions differ from eternal truths, their struggles reveal valuable insights into the deep challenges, psychology, and troubled consciousness of those who rejected God's plan, surrendering true liberty for the false security and utopian illusion of equal outcomes instituted by forced compliance. First, the burden of choice, Kierkegaard's dizziness of freedom. True freedom demands that we choose, but real choice brings anxiety, uncertainty, and the fear of failure. For many, this inner dizziness became too much to bear, feeding a desire to escape the burden altogether. Second, the weight of responsibility. Sartre's Condemned to be Free. Freedom makes us fully accountable for our actions. There is no escape. For the one-third, this weight of personal responsibility stirred fear and resentment, driving a wish to shift blame or surrender accountability entirely. Third, the allure of forced freedom. Rousseau's Forced to be Free. Faced with these burdens, many chose to surrender agency and have freedom managed for them, trading genuine liberty for a false sense of security. They clung to the idea that real freedom lay in submitting to the general will and obeying the mandates of the so-called master minds, preferring imposed uniformity over the risks of true moral freedom. The one-third rejected God's plan. For them, the burden of agency came at too high a price: responsibility and accountability. We've now completed the first of our 3 inquiries into this new spiritual paradigm. 2 opposing plans: insourcing versus outsourcing light and truth. Now, once again, we choose to sustain God's plan to insource light and truth, and reject Lucifer's treacherous alternative of outsourcing it, whether by force or subtle surrender, preserving our agency as rational, volitional, and fallible moral agents. This deeper understanding of why insourcing light and truth matters now prepares us for the next podcast, Into This New Paradigm. We'll explore 2 insourcing models: divine guidance as a transitional path and divine becoming as a transformative one. Then we'll tackle our final inquiry in this 3-part series: the 2 moral outcomes, becoming less by dimming the light within, or becoming more by brightening it. Together, these insights will help us navigate the spiritual realm more wisely and help us, as parents, better prepare our youth to stand firm in the rising storm now upon us. This ends this Unit 32 presentation. Thank you for watching. Join us in Unit 33 as we continue this emergency podcast series for parents of Latter-day Saint youth. We'll dive deeper into the rising storm, driven by artificial superintelligence, social media influencers, and unvetted spiritual impressions, forces powerful enough to overwhelm today's youth beyond their ability to cope.